Welcome to the Calculus B section. In this section we'll be discussing inverse functions. So in prior we have discussed basic functions, trigonometric functions, and complex functions. However, up until this point we have only been dealing with the basic form of a function. So we will now introduce an inverse function. So let's say we had f of x is equal to x squared and g of x is equal to the square root of x. Well, in this case, we are going to state that f of g of x, or more commonly written as f of g of x, is equal to g of f of x, or g of f of x, is equal to x. Now, what this means is that g of x is the inverse of f of x, as well as f of x is the inverse of g of x. So we're going to prove this through 4 simple steps. So first we're going to say that y is equal to x squared, or f of x is equal to x squared. So we're going to start off with y because it makes this process a lot easier. So what we're going to do now is we're going to swap the y with the x. So we're going to say x is equal to y squared. Now we're going to solve for our y variable. We're going to isolate it, remove all exponents. So we're going to say the square root of x is equal to y. Now we're going to say that this y is the inverse function of the original function, and our original function was f of x equals x squared. Therefore, the inverse of x squared is equal to the square root of x. Now we can use our proof or our theorem and state that f of the square root of x, or f of g of x, is going to equal x. So when we plug this in, we're going to say that the square root of x squared is indeed equal to x. Therefore, f of x is the inverse of g of x. Now we're going to prove the same thing with the opposite. So we're going to say, we're going to start with g of x, or y equals the square root of x. We're going to say g of x is equal to the square root of x. Now we're going to again swap the y and the x values, and we're going to say x is equal to the square root of y. Okay, so now we're going to solve for our y, removing all exponents. Remember, this is actually y half. So we're going to square this, and we're going to say x squared is equal to y. And now we're going to substitute this y for a g negative 1 of x is equal to x squared of our original function. This is the inverse, and our original function was equal to the square root of x, which means that this should give us x when we say g of f of x. So when we say g of f of x, we're saying that g of x squared is going to equal x, and when we plug this in, we get x squared of the square root of that, and that's going to equal x. Therefore, these are the inverse functions of each other. I hope that was very informative, and if you need additional assistance, there's a bunch on the website. Thank you.